a candid conversation with the leaders. And we were grateful to have Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Governor J.B. Pritzker join in a candid conversation. And we will share that now. Thank you, everyone.
So, Governor, thank you for joining us in this important conversation about how we move folks forward and really heal as a city and a state, and if I can be so bold, really how we heal as a nation. But let's start with a little bit lighter note. And what's your favorite Chicago memory?
Well, I have to say, it's maybe one that a lot of moms or dads have, and I know that you're a baseball fan, Madam Mayor. So it was the first time that I took my son and daughter to a Cubs game. I was so excited to expose them to something that I love, and I hoped desperately that they would be as engaged in the game, as I would be. And the good news is that my daughter was mesmerized by everything going on the field. Just focused on, this was just during the warm up. And then my son couldn't have cared less. He had Star Trek figures with him, and he, basically got out of his chair, put the Star Trek figures on the chair, and, started playing with them, and didn't care if we were at home or anywhere else. But it was my daughter that was really fascinated by it. So that's one of my favorite memories, and, a great opportunity for me to just see who my kids are. My son, of course, is a massive Cubs fan now.
That's great.
How about yours?
It's hard to pick just one memory, because I've had many over the years. But I think where I will go is when I first came to Chicago. I came here as a law student. I'd never lived in a city as big as Chicago, and I was just overwhelmed but amazed by all the neighborhoods and all the complexities. But I remember in the fall of '86, when I first moved here, and I was a poor, struggling law student at U of C. I lived right near the lake, and in particular, I lived right near the Point in Hyde Park. And I remember going out to the Point and looking northward toward this extraordinarily beautiful city with all the big high rises and architecture, but also just the majesty of the lake. And I've got a lot of great Chicago memories, but that's really one that sticks out to me, that, even from afar, I experienced the incredible diversity and richness of Hyde Park, but also looked back on this majestic city and a beautiful lake.
Sure. So, Mayor, I know one of the questions that was posed to us was a question about, just given all the challenges that we've gone through, all of us in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois over the last year, and of course the racial reckoning moment that we are in. What's a personal reflection that you have on that as a leader?
Well, there's many lessons that I feel like I've learned over the course of this really, really hard year. And you and I have had a number of discussions in trying to figure out the path forward and what was the right thing to do. But I think for me, the biggest lesson learned as a leader is really to listen. It's easy to kind of react in the moment. It's harder to show that restraint that really is required when you're listening. But I think coming to circumstances in with people with a really humble heart and a willingness to listen and learn from what people are really saying and what their frustrations are, what their anger, what their aspirations are. When I've held back and just allowed myself the luxury of listening, better things, I think, come from that experience than trying to rush in and solve the problem. And, I think you and I are similar in this way. We want to solve problems. We want to help people. And that's our reflex. We want to jump in. But sometimes it's better to just sit back and listen and really understand where people are. And that way, then use that experience to craft the solutions. Hard to do when you feel, like you want to demonstrate that you're an effective leader. But I think powerful lesson for me. And how about you?
Yeah, it's such a great reflection, and honestly, it plays into, it fits nicely with the way I think about, the most important things about the last, what I would reflect upon, because the racial reckoning that we're undergoing, I mean, I think it's vitally important, particularly for somebody like me, to listen, and also to make sure that you're surrounded by people who can, help you understand the depth of the feeling that people are having in communities of color about what was going on. I mean, George Floyd was a spark for many people that made them stop. Let's start with the African American community, where many people had experienced something like that, or something short of that, or knew somebody who had that experience, and knew somebody who died at the hands of police who had done wrong. And but I did not. I mean, I knew people maybe in a secondary fashion, but not a close friend that I could, ask about their experience, or that I had heard from already. So the fact that I had this diverse staff that I had put together, my senior staff is the most diverse in the state's history. And I realized how important that was in that moment, that I had senior members of my staff, men. I remember one man in particular who walked into my office, a black man, closed the door, and he was simultaneously emotional, almost crying, and angry. And he was expressing to me what it is that he felt about what was going on, and that he didn't know exactly what he needed to do, but he felt like we needed to do something. And we ultimately, you and I, and many leaders, I think, have taken the listening that we did during this time period, and even the experience that you've had as a for your entire life, as a black woman, and been able to bring it to bear in legislating and creating laws and trying to protect people from the sins of many years, of decades, of centuries, really. And we've tried to bring action to it. But the fact that you mentioned listening, and the thing that I was thinking most about is the people that surrounded me helped me as long as I listened to them, and I did. They helped me to really feel what they were feeling, and then to act upon that. So that's something that really sticks with me about those moments in the middle of the summer.
So if I can just add to that, I have spent a lot of time thinking about my dad over the course of this year. My dad grew up very, very poor in Arkansas, in a little tiny town was so small that it doesn't exist anymore. Literally like a dirt road through the cotton fields, and then you saw kind of a little cluster of houses. But my father spent a lot of time talking to me about his experience growing up in the Jim Crow South, and really the daily humiliations that he and his family and everybody in their black community, and trying to stay out of harm's way. And I've thought a lot about the stories that he told me growing up. I grew up obviously in a very different time, and I would say to him, well, I would never stand for that. I would never do that. And he would say, no, you would. because you do that to survive. And your comment about, do you know someone who's experienced this? So my grandmother's husband was killed by the Klan before my mother was even born, and no thought that there would ever be any kind of accountability. This man went on to live his life. Our family left Alabama. My mother's family was from Alabama as a result of that racial violence. But so a lot of these things are just so deeply ingrained in the family stories and lore of Black folks going back multiple generations. And it was something about this moment, and there have been other moments, of course, but really something about this moment, this summer, that unleashed those, I'll say, centuries of pent-up anger and frustration and fear that I hope we continue to use as fuel to address the wrongs of the past and the present. It's hard. It's hard figuring out in many instances what is the right thing to do in the moment. But that's why I say, rather than the react for me, is I want to draw upon my own life's experience. I want to listen to the pain that people in the city have experienced, because it's different than what I experienced growing up in a much smaller town, and get to a place that we're the better for it. And I think we're still very much on that journey. But I will say it's great to have a partner like you.
Well, thank you. And I would remind you that when we were over the summer, experiencing those, the really all summer, and it continues even today, but experiencing those moments, I remember the context. We had a racist in the White House.
Yes.
And that's the broader context of, there were these injustices that were occurring at the hands of police and people reacting to them, but it was the broader context of a nation and a leader that wasn't listening. And therefore, there was a moment there where we really, I think all of us, took the opportunity to begin the process of change. And it's ongoing. There's more to do, but it's accelerated. And I'm honestly excited about what's happening.
I agree with that.
Well, I know that, one of the, having all of that experience, I think, over the, as the tensions were mounting and a lot of concern across the country. But, I know we all felt like there was something maybe that stood out, like a conversation or a person or, something that you experienced, a moment maybe over the summer or during the last year at some time that really gave you hope, that in the midst of all of the difficulty, that, hope kind of emerged in some experience or person that you, saw or felt or spent time with. So I wondered whether you have a memory like that of last year.
I do, and there again are many, but one that I will share is this: that horrible last weekend of May, where we saw violence and looting come to our city in a way I really think we'd never seen before, but certainly not since the late 60s. That Monday morning was June 1st. And I got up early and started on the far south side. I wanted to see the damage and the harm firsthand. And it was 2 days before we were supposed to start reopening for the first time after a spring of shutdowns. And I saw just devastation all over the city. Businesses that literally there was nothing left in the store. Even the shelving was gone. And every single person that I met, I asked the question, should we reopen in 2 days' time? And what I heard from every single person, without fail, in every neighborhood, was we have to. We have to because we need to not let this moment define us. We have to because our customers need to see us. We have to because our employees need to work. And I thought to myself, if these business people, and a lot of them were really small businesses that, were, as they were saying this to me, literally shedding tears of pain for what they had lost, the sacrifices that they had made over so many years, just gone in an instant. If those folks still had hope in their heart and were willing to move forward, how could I not have hope? And I thought a lot about that day and those experiences many, many times since. And there are lots of other examples, but that one in particular, where you're standing literally in the middle of a debris, broken glass, everything shattered all around you, but yet those individuals, men and women, still had hope in their heart. That gave me a lot of a sense of what the resiliency is of the people in the city, but also just something I have carried forward with me and I hold very, very close to me in times of despair. I think about them. And
I had something similar.
Yeah. As well.
Well, I had something similar happen, and I was, I'll just tell you that there was a restaurant I went to visit during the summer, when we were trying to rebuild, and there was a small restaurant in a strip mall. I was really shaking hands and getting to know some of the people at these small businesses that have been affected. And this was a small strip mall in which this elderly African-American woman stood at the door because, we weren't going inside because there wasn't any indoor dining, at least at that moment. And she was doing takeout and, making the business work, but she had a broken window and a piece of plywood over it. And she was standing in the doorway and she was glad to meet me. And her son standing behind her, and she's probably 70 years old. And this is a place that clearly she had owned for some time. And so I asked her, well, what can I do to help? And how are you getting through this? And she said, I'm just going to get through because I have to get through. And I'm going to, she kind of expressed this sort of almost like she's had to do this before in her life.
Yeah.
Many times. Yeah. And that kind of spirit of perseverance, of the ability to just pick yourself up and, after you got knocked down and just keep going. So I had that feeling like you're describing of hope that came from her. And then I'll just add to that I don't think there was a speaker that got me more emotional at the recent inauguration of President Biden than our youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman. She was, I didn't expect it. I saw her stand up. I didn't know who she was. She stood up there and maybe 45 seconds or a minute into it, I was with two other people. We were all socially distanced, but watching this program, watching the inauguration. And I turned to somebody and said, how old is she? Because
Yeah.
she spoke like she'd lived a whole lifetime.
Yes.
And
yes.
She's 22 years old.
Phenomenal. Absolutely
amazing. And she summed up a lot of what I think many of us feel about the moment that we're in and the moment that we've experienced over the last year.
She was incredible. I was at home watching it with Amy and Viv, and we kept saying, Viv, look. But yeah, she was just absolutely phenomenal. Her story is incredible, training herself to also overcome a stutter and nervousness and really memorizing a lot of this, of the poem. Really, when you see something like that, it's just beaming, really beaming with pride.
I also felt inadequate. I don't know about you. I felt inadequate.
Yeah, I thought about myself at that age and thinking, could I have done that? No chance whatsoever. So you got to give it, you got to give her props. I mean, she not only is obviously supremely talented, but to perform on that kind of a stage with the world watching, just a lot of pride for her.
Yeah, and I think for our nation, really, I was moved. I really was. I'm almost to tears. Well, Mayor, I know that the last question that was posed to us was what song would you play to inspire our city and our state on the journey toward racial healing, toward racial equity, toward a better tomorrow?
Well, that was a hard one for me, mostly because I'm a huge music fan, and I really do believe that songs kind of capture the moment. So I'm going to pick one that may seem strange, but it's one that inspires me because if you listen to the lyrics, it's about fighting through adversity and claiming victory. And the song is "Just One Victory" by Todd Rundgren. I know an unusual choice, but I grew up hearing that song. I have siblings that are older than me, and we're heavily into the music of the 70s. So I'm very much influenced by them. It's a song that I've been hearing in my head since I was very, very young. And it is about fighting for what's right and really claiming your place, screening out all the noise, but being really focused on purpose. So I think I would advocate for "Just One Victory" by Todd Rundgren.
That's awesome. Well, for me, I thought a lot about what would bring healing. The first thing that came to mind was just thinking about songs that are soothing in some way. That bring down the temperature. And so that we can all breathe and talk to one another. But there's this great and so I chose one like that. And there's this great song, "Change Is Gonna Come," and Sam Cooke song, and it was written and performed before I was born. But in the crux of the civil rights movement, and it's so even today. Here we are, 57 years later, and that song is relevant to this moment, and it's soothing, but it's a reminder, that I think on the subject of hope, and the challenge, but the hope. I think that one does it for me.
Well, great choice. And anything by Sam Cooke is always a great choice, but particularly that one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Governor, for this great conversation. Really appreciate your leadership, and we just got to keep fighting the fight on behalf of our residents. They need us, and we need them.
Well, you're terrific. It's been great being partnered with you in these endeavors, and I know we have a lot of work ahead, but we'll make progress. Right, change is going to come. We're making progress even now.
All right. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.